Hello students, today we are going to finish our last unit with the poem Where the Mind is Without Fear. It is written by a very famous Indian poet, that is Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore is a name that doesn't need any introduction. We are blessed to have this poem in our syllabus. Now at that time, what was the literary background of India? You can see here that Indian poetry and Indian literature in general has a long history dating back to Vedic literature. Vedic literature was full of so many epics and full of literature. Poetry in foreign languages such as Persian and English also had a strong influence on Indian poetry. The poetry reflects diverse spiritual tradition within India. In our poetry or in our Indian literature, we can see a complete cultural heritage which is very particular, and many Indian poets have been inspired by mystical experiences of their life. Poetry is the oldest form of literature and has a rich written and oral tradition. Rabindranath Tagore was born at Calcutta at Bengal Presidency in British India. You will be pleased to know that he was the first Asian to win the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1913. Tagore introduced new prose and verse forms and the use of colloquial language into Bengali literature. He wrote over 1,000 poems, 8 volumes of short stories, almost 24 plays and playlets, 8 novels, and many books and essays on philosophy, religion, education, and social topics. This poem is a prayer to a universal father figure, that is the God Almighty. The poem, with its inspiring lines, elaborates Tagore's vision of a new, enlightened, free India from the clutches of British Empire. Now you can see the central idea of the poem. The central idea of the poem is based on the theme of freedom of India from colonization and what it takes to achieve that. During the British Raj, India suffered a massive loss, not only in its cultural heritage but also in the development of each individual. We were not so free in expressing ourselves, whether it is in the form of poetry, whether it is in the form of any kind of media. Society was divided on the basis of caste, creed, race, and religion. Status of women deteriorated and uncertainty reigned. In the poem, Tagore wishes that our country gets rid of these shackles and emerges as a free nation in a true sense. The poet desires peace and harmony among his countrymen and prays that his country might attain overall welfare and self-reliance. The tone of this poem is dignified and inspirational. None of the things that Tagore describes seem to be impossible or even hard to achieve. He makes us feel that all those things are within our reach, and we only have to reach out and grab them. Now let's see the text. Where the mind is without fear, and the head is held high where knowledge is free. In these 2 lines, the poet pledges to the Almighty that his country should be free from any fear of domination or forced compulsion. He wants that everyone in his country should be free and hold their heads high in dignity. He dreams of a nation where knowledge or education would be free. That is, education should not be restricted to the upper class only, but everybody should be free to acquire knowledge. The author wishes for a world, in the 3rd line, which is where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. The author wishes to acquire a world, to find solace in a world which is not fragmented or isolated by prejudices based on caste, creed, color, or other baseless superstitions. In the fourth line, where words come out from the depth of truth, it means the poet wants to say that prejudices and superstition should not divide the people in groups and break their unity. The word should be full of truth. Now, the next, where tireless striving stretches its arm towards perfection. He wants a nation where people are truthful, not superficial, and what should come out from the depth of their hearts. And the author talks about desire for a country where people should strive without getting tired to reach perfection, leaving behind prejudices and old traditions. In line number 7 to 9, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever widening thought and action. In these lines, the poet wants the power of reason to dominate the minds of his countrymen. He does not want the stream of reason to be lost among outdated customs and traditions, and only that can direct the mind towards selfless thoughts and everlasting action. In line 10 to 12, or in the last line, into that heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. The author asks the father, it means the author is addressing to the God, is praying to the God to awaken his country into such a heaven of freedom. Now, let's see the figures of speech that are used in this poem. We can see that figures of speech like imagery, alliteration, assonance, synecdoche, apostrophe, metaphor, personification are used in the poem. The rhetorical devices that are used here are, first is imagery. Imagery is the key point in this poem, as the poet imagines of a country which is free from any kind of foundation. He dreamed of a country with no boundaries. He prays for the welfare of the country in the form of imagination. Now comes alliteration. Alliteration, we know that it is the repetition of some alphabets in a line or in a sentence. The example is, the head is held high. Now we can see that H letter is again and again repeated. Assonance. Assonance means the repetition of sound. Tireless, striving, stretches. Now we can see the repetition of S sound here, and assonance means the repetition of consonant sound. Dreary, desert, sand of dead habit, repetition of D sound. So the next figure of speech is anaphora. Anaphora is a figure of speech where a word is used in every sentence in the beginning, just like the word where is being repeated at the beginning of all the clauses or statements. Now here synecdoche is also used, as the word country here means the people of the country. The next is metaphor. This rhetorical device is used when a covert comparison is made between two different things or ideas. In this poem, the poet uses the device of metaphor in lines 7 to 8 when he compares reason with a stream of water and habit with a desert. So this is the metaphor. The next metaphor can be seen into narrow domestic wall. Here the big world is compared to many small rooms. So there are so many metaphors here. Personification is another figure of speech that is used. It is to give a personified idea to an abstract thing like freedom, like country, like we can see the example tireless striving, which is an abstract idea that has been assigned with a human aspect and stretches its arm. Country, which is personified to be awakened. So that is personification. Apostrophe, when an address is meant. We have seen these figures of speech in detail in our first lecture, that was figures of speech. Father, let my country awake. Here apostrophe is used. Now comes your assignment. What is the main idea of the poem? You have to write down. Now question number 2 is explain the line where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit. Question number 3, into that heaven of freedom my father let my country away. What kind of country the poet wishes for? Thank you, students. So here we are ending our unit 5. In the next lecture we will start unit 4, that comprises of short story. See you soon. Thank you.